My boyfriend told his daughter it's rude to talk about her period at the dinner table, so we were all sitting at dinner last Tuesday. I made spaghetti and garlic bread because it's easy and everyone actually eats it without complaining. My son Jake was sitting next to me, and my boyfriend Chris was at the head of the table with his two daughters Hannah and Sophie on either side of him. Everything was normal. Jake was telling us about his science project on volcanoes. Sophie was on her phone even though Chris keeps telling her not to bring it to dinner. Hannah was actually listening to Jake and asking questions about the baking soda experiment he did. Then Hannah touched her face and said her skin was getting bad again. She looked at her dad and said it's because she's on her period and her face always breaks out the first 2 days. Chris immediately put his fork down. He told Hannah it's rude to talk about her period at the dinner table. Then he looked at Jake and said that now my son probably lost his appetite and can't even finish his food. I looked at Jake. He had a meatball halfway to his mouth and looked confused. Jake shrugged and said he's fine. Then he told Hannah she's still pretty even with the breakouts. Hannah smiled at him and said thanks. But Chris wasn't done. He said periods are private topics and shouldn't be discussed in mixed company. Hannah's face went red. She asked what mixed company even means, and Chris said it means when boys are around. I put my own fork down. I asked Chris if he was serious right now. He said yes, and that he was raised to keep certain topics private, and he's raising his daughters the same way. Hannah stood up from the table. She said she was just talking about her skin. Sophie looked up from her phone for the first time and told her dad he was being weird. Chris told Sophie to stay out of it. I told Chris that periods are normal and there's nothing shameful about mentioning them. He said he never said shameful, he said private. I asked what's the difference. Chris said girls should learn discretion. I asked him if he tells his daughters to hide their tampons when they buy them at the store too. He said that's different. Hannah grabbed her plate and left the table. She went to her room. Sophie followed her. Jake asked if he could be excused and I said yes. He took his plate to the kitchen and then went upstairs. It was just me and Chris sitting there with half-eaten spaghetti getting cold. He said I undermined him in front of the kids. I said he embarrassed his daughter for no reason. Chris said his house, his rules. I reminded him we were at my house actually since we were doing dinner at my place that night. He said it doesn't matter whose house it is. He's the father, and he gets to decide what's appropriate. I asked him if he thinks Jake is so fragile that hearing the word period is going to traumatize him. Chris said boys don't need to hear about that stuff. I asked him how he expects his daughters to have healthy relationships with men, if he teaches them their normal body functions are too gross to mention. He stood up and said I was twisting his words. I said I wasn't twisting anything. He literally told Hannah not to talk about her period because a boy was present. Chris grabbed his keys. He said he's going home and taking his daughters with him. I said fine. He went upstairs and got Hannah and Sophie. They came down with their backpacks. Hannah had been crying. Sophie walked past her dad without looking at him. Hannah hugged Jake on her way out and thanked him again for being nice. Jake said anytime. After they left, Jake asked me if he did something wrong. I told him no, he handled it perfectly. He said he doesn't get why periods are such a big deal. I said some people were raised to think they are, and it's hard to change that.